So there are three different ways to get a preparatory image onto your plate. One is to draw directly on the surface with a Sharpie, and even though you're drawing black on black, the Sharpie creates a different sort of surface color than the hard ground has on its own. Some of that will rely on how the light hits the plate. You can see my Sharpie marks there. So nothing that I've sketched on the plate will be etched or show up when I print. This is just a way to do a compositional preparatory drawing on the surface. The second way to get an image onto a plate to then scribe through the ground or to draw onto the plate is to use transfer paper. You can buy rolls of transfer paper from Serral. You can buy packs of transfer paper at most art stores. Or you can make your own transfer paper, and this is just red iron oxide smeared across a piece of newsprint. So you can see that that offsets onto my finger, and this graphite offsets onto my finger, and those will offset onto the plate. So here's an example of transferring an image onto a plate. So you want to take the transfer paper and make sure that you have the pigment side down. It can be larger than your plate. This sheet just happens to be the same size as my plate. Take your sketch. It can be on sketchbook paper, or in this case I took a sketch from my sketchbook and traced it onto tracing paper. Make sure that the image is backwards when you're transferring it, so that when it prints it will read correctly. It will be left to right in the correct orientation. If you're not concerned about orientation, then transfer it however you want. But once the drawing is placed over the transfer paper, I'm essentially just going to trace, and my recommendation is to keep it as simple as possible. If you get too much information down, it gets really hard to know exactly where to scribe, and I find that it sort of stifles my drawing on the plate. I lose some of the gesture quality, and it ends up looking like a tracing. So I tend to just transfer sort of skeletal contour line type images onto my plate. So I'm not finished transferring, but you can see the transfer there of the image. So I would still need to take my scribe and scratch through the hard ground. This is just sitting on the surface. And I can wipe it off if I rub it with my finger, although the pigment often sticks to the ground, so it's never completely gone. But you can still see. I would still need to scribe through the ground on the plate, and I'll do that in another video. Once the felts are engaged, that leaves me with the press bed to work on, set my plate that I'm going to print here. The felts are nice and tight and trapped right here, so they're nice and flat. And I would just put my plate here, and what this will do is that the pressure from the roller and the felts will push the graphite off my tracing paper sketch and onto the plate, and it'll stick to the hard ground. So I want to make sure that my drawing is face down, and you can do this with sketchbook or drawing paper. It doesn't need to be tracing paper. And just to be on the safe side, I'm going to tape it down so it doesn't move when the felts go over it. So the reason I chose tracing paper is that way I could actually see how it lined up with the plate. With the sketchbook, you want to make sure that you cut it to the size of the plate. Sorry, sketchbook paper, you want to make sure you cut it to the size of the plate and set it on there. So I got my plate, my drawing transfer. I just want a sheet of newsprint. And the felts go over it. Alright, so my plate and tracing paper sketch have gone through the press. And you can see how the graphite has transferred onto the plate. So it gives me a map to work from when I'm drawing with the scribe on the plate. I don't have to make these exact marks. And again, until I scratch through the ground, none of this will print. If I were to clean off the plate and try to print it, it would be blank right now. Until I scratch away the ground and etch it, there's nothing permanently in the